All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is Wednesday, and you know what that means. Time to dive deeper into the lost wisdom of the ages and hermetics and the wisdom of Hermes Trismegistus, or Thoth, the Egyptian sage god. And diving deeper into the Corpus Hermeticum and our series in discovering what we can find in this ultimate classic. The Corpus Hermeticum is one of the primary works within the Hermetic tradition. This Renaissance era craft is nonetheless based upon philosophical materials from far older times. Maybe even, I think, the previous Golden Age, ladies and gentlemen, in Atlantis, but namely the 3rd or 4th century AD, from which the primordial material came. And so we already went through the Hermetica on this channel, which was very fascinating and deep. And so I never know exactly where this is going to end up. So hope you got yourself a comfy chair and a beverage of choice and are ready. And I thank you for being here. So previously we went through the introduction, and that video is also in this playlist. But now we will go into Hermes Trismegistus, his first book. And so, that being said, let's dive right into it and see what we can discover. So it's broken down into numbered paragraphs or sentences, and it is a dialogue back and forth between quote unquote father and quote unquote son. I'm not exactly sure. I'm convinced that one of the characters is Hermes, but who is the father is the question. Well, I was wondering if it was Atum from all the references of Atum in the Hermetica, but let's dive right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Hermes Trismegistus, his first book. Number 1, "O my son," he begins, "write this first book, both for humanity's sake and for piety towards God." For piety towards God. I wanted to look at that actually. And so let me share this with you real quick. Bloop. So here is the definition of piety. Piety is a virtue which may include religious devotion or spirituality. And so a duty of respect, a devoutness. This is what we're talking about in all the time on this channel, is what Hermes said in the Hermetica, which was pure philosophy is spiritual striving through constant contemplation, or a dedication, a continued lifestyle of some sort of personal discipline in this seeking to achieve and maintain happiness and enlightenment through working on it. But so I just thought that would be important to point out there, because piety could be taken, it's important to know the meaning of words, ladies and gentlemen. So with a devotion to spirituality. Number 2, for there can be no religion more true and just than to know the things that are. Than to know the things that are. It continues, and to acknowledge thanks for all things to him that made them, which thing I shall not cease continually to do. This is powerful. It's a philosophy. I'll come back over this. I'm going to keep reading it. Number 3, what then should a man do, O Father, to lead his life well, seeing there is nothing here true? The answer, be pious and religious, O my son, for he that does so is the best and highest philosopher. And without philosophy, it is impossible ever to attain the height and exactness of piety and religion. That was number 4. Number 5, but he that shall learn and study the things that are, and how they are ordered and governed, and by whom and for what cause, or to what end, will acknowledge thanks to the workman as to a good father, an excellent nurse, or a faithful steward. And he that gives thanks shall be pious or religious. And he that is religious shall know both where the truth is and what it is, in learning that he will be yet more and more religious. See, it keeps bringing up these terms piety and religious. And it's very interesting because those are terms that are, well, piety, not so much, but being religious is something that's thrown around a lot. And I think maybe we lose a deeper, more esoteric meaning behind the idea. And I think that is what is being is what this is getting at, is a deeper connotation behind this idea of religion and religious, going to what it said in number 2 there, is that there can be no religion more true or just, which is a great sentiment, and I love that, than to know the things that are. You might say or ask, what does that mean, to know the things that are? Well, to discover the nature of reality in the universe in an open-minded fashion. And so, as far as astrology and many other mystery schools are focused around, and these are the things that can help us know the things that are. And so that, I believe, is a great sentiment, for there can be no religion more true or just than to know the things that are, and then to acknowledge thanks for all things, for creation. And that's a simple purpose there. But let's continue. Number 6, for never, O my son, shall or can that soul, which while it is in the body, lightens and lifts up itself to know and comprehends that which is good and true, slide back to the contrary, for it is infinitely enamored by this, and forgets all evils. And when it hath learned and known its father and progenitor, it can no more apostatize or depart from that good. That is a powerful but complicated. That's a powerful but complicated one there. I'll try to read it a little faster. For never, O my son, shall or can that soul, which while it is in the body, lightens and lifts up itself to know and comprehends that which is good and true, slide back to the contrary. For it is infinitely enamored by this, and forgets all evils, and when it hath learned and known its father and progenitor, it can no more apostatize or depart from that good. This is some deep stuff here, ladies and gentlemen. I have not read this before. Very powerful. Number 7 here. And let this, O son, be the end of religion and piety, by which when one arrives, you will both live well and die blessedly. While your soul is not ignorant, whither it must return and fly back again. Number 8. For this only, O son, is the way to truth, which our progenitors traveled in, and by which, making their journey, they at length attained to the good. It is a venerable way, and plain, but hard and difficult for the soul to go in, that is in the body. For first must it war against its own self, and after much strife and dissension, it must be overcome of the part, for the contention is of one against two, while it ascends, and they strive to hold and detain it. But the victory of both is not like, for the one hastens to that which is good, but the other is a neighbor to the things that are evil. So this is talking about our dual nature, our mortal, physical, ego, survival programming nature, and then our spiritual, divine, immortal nature. I was going to add the word good there, but I think this is beyond good and bad. Those are just human judgments. But this dual nature here and the body being subject to the hard and difficult, quote unquote, said for the soul to go in, that is in the body. But when you are in the spiritual way, when you are of this pious and religious way, or this dedication to spiritual reality, or Atum, God, the Tao, whatever that be for you, ladies and gentlemen. And it's also interesting how I put it. He said, "Oh, son, let this be the end of religion and piety, by which, when one arrives to this quote unquote enlightenment, I guess, or this awareness or this understanding, it reminds me of the states that Hermes described when in his visions, when becoming one with Atum." And this also reminds me of Atum communicating to Hermes in those visions in this kind of style. For this only, O son, is the way to truth. And he says, which our progenitors have traveled in. So those who have come before have known this path of this esoteric, occult, spiritual, mystical philosophy, this wisdom of the ages. And they have traveled it, and by which, making their journey, they at length attained to the good. It is a venerable way to attain to the good, but very hard and difficult for the soul to go this way, to do this way of truth. This is profound. I'm breaking this down and trying to understand it myself, so hopefully you're getting value. Thank you very much, because this is only the first, well, the front and back of the first page, but just super deep. There's a lot being said with a small amount of words. And so it is difficult for the soul to go in that is in the body. So for those of us here living in the physical material plane, dealing with life, it is a difficult path to do this spiritual dedication. Because, I mean, we have to do what we have to do to survive and exist. But the victory of both is not like. I think what it's saying there is the victory of our ego, survival nature, our mortal nature, would be the opposite of the victory for our spiritual nature. For the one hastens to that which is good. So the spiritual side of us quickly goes to that which is good. But the other side, our ego, mortal nature, is a neighbor to the things that are evil, using a metaphor there. It's interesting how this was translated. I wonder what the, original words really meant, how words after translations can have multiple meanings, or maybe a variance of meaning, similar, but sometimes a little bit of difference of word makes a big difference in the context. But while it ascends, this contention is one against the two, and we're warring against our own selves. But while we ascend, our ego, physical, mortal nature, tries to hold us down like crabs in the bucket, if you've heard that. But they strive to hold and detain it, our spiritual nature, from achieving achieving a release or a unattachment, a disassociation with the ego. Because once the ego realizes, hey, you're trying to kill me, that's not going to happen. So it'll do everything it can to fight against it. But if the two parts become overcome, they become quiet. That which is good, our spiritual nature desires to be set at liberty. But the mortal nature, our ego, the things that are evil, love, bondage, and slavery, which is that exactly the opposite of this liberty or this freedom or this escape to a oneness or to, it's very deep. This is amazing. It is by them led and carried to be fascinating. So if the two parts can be overcome, they become quiet and are content to accept of it as their ruler. That makes me think of the saying, the ego makes a terrible master, but an excellent servant. If it becomes the master over you, like it's described before, then it is not quiet, and you are stuck in the trap, quote unquote, bondage or slavery, rather than the escape or the unattachment. This is, O son, in number 12, the guide in the way that leads thither. For you must first forsake the body before your death. This reminds me of when we talked about the philosophy of dying while you're still alive, or the idea that was spoken about that like being in the world but not of it. And so, or kind of like letting go of your extreme dependence on the mask that is the character. I'm thinking of the masks that they would have in theater and above the theaters of the happy and sad. And these are the personas or the characters that we all play in our lives, the names that we're given, and, all the different characteristics and traits and qualities that come from the people that we grow up around and influences that we have in our lives. But it creates this character that we hold on to so much. And in order for us to truly escape and have a blissful kind of freedom, we somewhat, not all the way, see, ego death is something people like to talk about, but that's crazy. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about here and you're still listening, then Thank you very much. But the ego is this part of us that is like, oh, I am this person and I have to, it's wow, I've never actually tried to simplify an explanation of the ego, but it's that thing that makes you want to feel, like superior than someone, or have a status or a ranking, or, you know, be better, and all of these kind of things. I'm not explaining it very well, but it's a judgmental based thing, that we all one. So here we go. I figured this would be way easier. I just pull up another definition here. So a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance, the phrase, a boost to my ego. The part of the mind, psychoanalysis, the part of the mind that meditates between consciousness and the unconscious and is responsible for reality testing, in metaphysics, a conscious and thinking subject. In philosophy, the self is the relationship of an individual's own being, knowledge, and values. So this persona, this character that we create for ourselves. And then self relates the experience of one's inner and outer living presence. And see, so that there is even getting at our dual nature, this inner and outer conflict that we have going on with ourselves all the time in life. And Atum, I'm guessing, is describing this to Thoth or Hermes in a whole bunch of other mystical spiritual philosophy. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're getting value out of this, because I definitely am. And so thank you for being here. But by which making their journey, they link the tame to the good. This, O son, is the guide, the way that leads thither. For we must forsake the body before our death and get the victory in this contention and difficult life. That victory being the freedom, or the enlightenment, or the release of the need to have that boost to our ego and have the world make us feel good. Because when we are looking outside of ourselves for something, when it is not there, then we don't have it. But if we can create something within ourselves, a happiness or a sense of, when you can get your happiness from within yourself, then there's nowhere that you need to go to find it. It reminds me of my favorite story. I'm going to tell it again. Ladies and gentlemen. So there's a little, and I didn't come up with this, but there's a little kitten in the alley, and it's running around and it's chasing its tail, which is odd because usually dogs do that. But anyways, I like this little kitten. And so he's running around, he's chasing his tail. And there's this old alley cat, and he's lived in the alleys a long whole life and kind of rough and beaten up and stuff. But the old alley cat comes over to the kitten and says, "What the heck are you doing? What the hell are you doing?" And the little kitten says, "Oh, well, I'm chasing my tail." And he says, "Well, why are you doing that?" He says, "Well, I went to cat philosophy school," he says. The old kitten, the old alley cat goes, "Cat philosophy school? Huh? Well," and the little kitten says, "Yes, and I learned the two things that are most important for a cat. And the number one thing is happiness. And the number two thing is that it is located in your tail." And the old alley cat says, I never had a chance to go to cat philosophy school, but that is interesting. I have learned those two things, that it is indeed happiness, and it is located in your tail. And the little kitten says, "Yeah, so I'm chasing my tail, and once I get a lock on it, and I got a hold on it, I'll never let go, and I'll have an eternal lock on happiness." And the old alley cat says, "Well, That's interesting. That's one way to look at it. He says, but the real difference between me and you, even though we both know these things, is that I go about my business, he says, and I do what I need to do, and I know that it follows me wherever I go. Wherever I go. And this, I love that story. Round of applause. Anyways, this idea of having happiness within, creating it within yourself, like I say at the end of every one of my videos, there is no way to happiness or enlightenment. It is the way. It is the process that we must work on building through effort over time. And then eventually, once we can bring it to life, once it comes from within us, it follows us wherever we go. Then we are there already. And then hopefully the entire journey is wonderful. But wow, I see I didn't have any idea that this would go here. And it's funny, this would probably make somebody else think something totally different. So I love this. This is the fun of it. But the victory is of both sides is not the same. And so now, I'll read 12 again. This is, O son, the guide and the way that leads thither, for you must first forsake the body before your death and get the victory. So we were describing that spiritual bliss, maybe is a way to describe it. Once again, I have no clue what I'm going to title this video. The spiritual bliss, the victory in this contention and difficult life. And when you have overcome, then return. But now, number 13, but now, O my son, I will by heads run through the things that are. Because remember, he said back in the beginning, for there can be no religion more true or just than to know the things that are. And we asked, well, what does that mean? And he asked, what should a man do then, O Father, man or woman, to lead his life well in a spiritual and aligned way with the Tao or with God, Atum, spirit, universe, aligned with the force, in tune, in harmony. See, remember, this goes back to creating a better life for yourself. Not because, oh, we're spiritual people, and, because when you get in tune with God or the universe, that not being something that is separate from us, but something that we are connected to all the time, when we change our vibrations or our resonance or our frequencies or the level or state of our consciousness to something that is more aligned with quote unquote greater good or harmony with reality and nature rather than dissonance and a lack of harmony, then it really has a profound impact on our life. So we're not just talking about, oh yeah, if you be spiritual, you'll have a better life. It's like, no, this is about actually aligning our mind, our spirit, and our body, our emotions, and our thoughts, and all of this stuff to a better way that we have discussed at length on this channel. And when you have overcome, return. So, but now, O my son, I will by heads run through the things that are. Understand what I say, and remember what I hear, he says. 14. This will go from 14 through 33. And then the next page begins. Wow. There's a lot. There is a lot. The mind is in God. That's a key point. Now, number 14, all things that are moved, only that which is not immovable, all things that are moved, only that which is not immovable. What? That's a mind-boggling one. I wonder if that was translated correctly. That's like everything is vibrating. Only that which is everything, maybe, is not vibrating. Because that's the principle of, I'll keep going, sorry. 15, every body is able to be changed. Not everybody is dissoluble. Some bodies are able to be dissolved. Every living being is not mortal, nor every living thing is immortal. That which may be dissolved is also corruptible. That which abides always is unchangeable. That which is unchangeable is eternal. That which is always made is always corrupted. That which is made but once is never corrupted, neither becomes any other thing. Firstly, God. Secondly, the world. Thirdly, man. The world for man, and man for God. Of the soul, that part which is sensible is mortal, but that part which is reasonable is immortal. I'll read that one more time for you. Number 27. Of the soul, that part which is sensible is mortal, but that part which is reasonable is immortal. Every essence is immortal. Every essence is unchangeable. Everything that is paired. None of the things that are paired stand still. Not all things are moved by a soul, but everything that is moved by a soul. Everything that suffers is sensible. Everything that is sensible suffers. Everything that is sad rejoices also, and is a mortal, living creature. Not everything that has joy is also sad, but is an eternal, living thing. This is describing a lot here. It's the kind of sentiments that make you think. This is why Hermes or Thoth said that the secret to really getting this is pure philosophy, but a spiritual striving, even though yesterday we talked about not striving, but you know what I mean. The initiation of Hermes. Pure philosophy. This was the prophecies of Hermes. This spiritual striving through constant contemplation to attain true knowledge of Atum, the one God, which to me is the universe which we are existing in right now, which is creation. But also remember that God is not something that can be described, for its name is all names. But no names individually are its name. And these are the kind of lines that we are reading in the Corpus Hermeticum. Remember, he said, the one who we're reading from here today, so I, thrice greatest Hermes, the first of men, to attain all knowledge. Egyptian sage god, ladies and gentlemen, have inscribed the secrets of the gods. in sacred symbols and holy hieroglyphs, on these stone tablets, which I have concealed for a future world. Hopefully that's us now, here, that may seek our sacred wisdom. Through all-seeing mind, I myself have been the witness of the invisible things of heaven, and through contemplation, that was the point I was making here, through constant contemplation, reading, thinking some more, meditating on it. I like to pace around. Helps me think, but through this contemplation, have come to knowledge of the truth. This knowing I have set down in these writings. And that was the final lines of the prophecies of Hermes from the Hermetica. But I have a feeling that it also includes what we're reading here in the Corpus Hermeticum, for purposes of teaching and commentary and expanding the mind so that we can increase the quality of our lives through an increased awareness. So, not all things are moved by a soul, but everything that is moved by a soul. So apparently not all things are something that is. This makes me think of yesterday when Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching was saying, when you get this spiritual kind of awareness and this different way of going about life, often you seem very much like an idiot to people, or a fool, or, and I loved how Lao Tzu described that. He goes, I often seem an idiot, but I drift with the wind, or he said something like that. It was wonderful. If you missed yesterday's episode, go back and check it out. It was a good one. It was a good one, ladies and gentlemen. And when he's using the word paired there, that makes me think of polarity. The principle of polarity. Everything that is paired. None of the things that are paired stand still, because there's this back and forth, a resonance, a wave form, so to speak, that has a top and a bottom that go together. It's a oneness, just like a magnetic field. Wayne Dyer once gave his students a task when he was teaching, I forget what, metaphysics or something like that, and he gave them an assignment. It says, I want you to go home and bring back only the North Pole of a magnet. And it's impossible. No matter how small you cut it down, it always has to have this paired nature, this dual nature. And everything that is paired. And none of the things that are paired stand still, because it creates a field. Maybe. It's just me thinking. And I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. This is fascinating, and it helps to get us to go further by going back and forth on this kind of stuff. So not all things are moved by us. This was the one that really confused the heck out of me. Not all things are moved by a soul, but everything that is moved by a soul. Everything that suffers is sensible. Everything that is sensible suffers. I guess it would be unsensible to not realize the suffering in reality. Number 34, everything that is sad rejoices also and is a mortal living creature. See, that kind of describes the nature of life, to where you will have happiness and you will have sadness, because the same reason that everything is paired is that you cannot have one without the other. It is like light and darkness, happiness and unhappiness, sadness and rejoicing. And this is a mortal living creature. However, when you are divine being, non-body, or, we can speculate about the spiritual realm forever until we get there or get some kind of tangible proof. But for those of us who have made that conscious contact or have come to a personal knowing, then we don't really need that anyways, because that would defeat the purpose, wouldn't it? Anyway, not everything that has joy is also sad, but is an eternal living thing. Not everybody is sick. Everybody that is sick is corruptible. The mind, number 37, is in God. The mind is in God. Reasoning, or disputing and discoursing and all of this intellectualism that we do, is in man. And those two are a huge distinction. And that is the distinction that David Hawkins was getting at when we were reading in The Wisdom of Dr. David Hawkins and The Beginning of Power versus Force a week or two ago, was that it's like there's a difference between the subjective and the objective debate. In epistemology or spirituality and consciousness and all of these things are of a subjective nature, which is the reasoning or the disputing and the discoursing. Because here in the material realm, the ego side of us I guess wants to do that. And so reason is in the mind. Reasoning, being different, is in man. This is very deep. The mind is absent of suffering. However, our mortal nature is not. The mind, I think, in this reference being the spiritual side of us, not just our brain. This is spiritual philosophy, so don't take it too literal here. This is every word here has a deep meaning. The mind is absent of suffering. No thing in a body is true. All that is incorporeal is void of lying. Truth versus falsehood. See, that was also what David Hawkins was testing. This universal collective consciousness that exists that determines strong or weak responses, which was very interesting because he got into the subtlety of the difference between looking for a polarity or duality based answer for something like consciousness or God that would be a oneness, a non-dual thing, and how you would be getting these dual answers from. But that was very fascinating. We'll have to go deeper in that in the future as well, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed that in the past. But nothing good is upon earth. Nothing evil is in heaven. God, it says, is good, and man is evil. Good is voluntary, or of its own accord. Evil is involuntary, or against its will. The gods choose good things as good things. Time is a divine thing. Law is humane. Very deep, ladies and gentlemen. Whatsoever is in heaven is unalterable. All upon earth is alterable. So now it's talking about the difference between the material and the spiritual realm, or heaven, quote unquote, and earth. But remember, these deepings, these meanings are much deeper, ladies and gentlemen. Easy for me to say. I think we'll leave it there for today because my mind is already blown. And next Wednesday, we'll finish the second half of that, going from verse number 45, just about, to quite a few, 88, and that will conclude the first book of Hermes Trismegistus, his first book. You can tell it was his first book. It's a little choppy and hard to read, and maybe like a C or B plus. I'm kidding, ladies and gentlemen. I'm kidding. You cannot judge. This is the most incredible, mystical, spiritual philosophy that touches upon astronomy, science, nature, and a great deal of understanding the nature of reality and God, or the universe, or Atum, the Tao, Great Spirit, Grand Organized Design, God. And then the second section, for a couple weeks from now, will be called the Pymander. It begins by saying, my thoughts being once seriously busied about things that are. And see, that's what we're going through right now, this discovering the things that are. Because remember, for there can be no religion more true and just than to just know the things that are in the nature of reality. But he's saying later, my thoughts were so busied about the things that are, and my understanding lifted up, all my bodily senses being exceedingly held back, as it is with them that are very tired, by reason either of fullness of meat or of exhaustion. I thought I saw one of an exceeding great stature and of an infinite greatness call me by my name and say to me, what do you wish to see and hear? Or what would you understand to learn and know? And this was when he began his communication with Atum, as it's titled in the Hermetica, or God, to be generic. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where we will leave our study for today. Wow. Kind of felt different today. I felt a little different. Maybe I'm in need of some more lemonade, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. And remember, like we always say, seek to achieve and maintain happiness through enlightenment. Seek to discover the lost wisdom of the ages and the lost hidden wisdom of the pharaohs and the hermetics, as well as many other great classics and the mysteries of our history, ladies and gentlemen. But mainly, remember that there is no way to happiness, because it is the way. It is what we must bring to life. And when we can do that, then all the things we've been telling ourselves, oh, I'll be happy when I get this or have that, all that becomes irrelevant, because then we are there. And hopefully the entire journey is wonderful. Thank you so much once again. Be sure to leave a comment and let me know what you think. It's great to respond and go back and forth with all of you that have things to share, and it's just a fun journey. And so I can't say how much I appreciate all of you for joining me in my discovery and readings. I mean, I'm just really fascinated with this stuff, and I'd be doing this anyways. And I decided a few years ago, after watching people on their YouTube channels, that I'm like, why don't I just share my thoughts? And that'll actually get me to read more and pontificate and do this constant contemplation that Hermes describes, so that we can come to attain true knowledge of the things that are, or God, and life and reality, and in turn, hopefully, increase the quality of our experience. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, be the change you want to see. Be the example that you want to set. No, 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 no.